Consider this a sign of how hot a prospect Austin Bashi is. The UFC booked his debut on the UFC Vegas 101 main card against noted prospect killer Christian Rodriguez. Bashi, an undefeated featherweight talent, has long been on the radar of prospect watchers in MMA. Rodriguez, aka C-Rod, had been the bump in the road for names like Raul Rosas Jr. and Cameron Simon. While a loss at UFC Vegas 101 wouldn't derail Bashi's career, his performance might be the deciding factor in whether he took the fast track or slow road to start an UFC career. The fight opened with Rodriguez stunning Bashi with a knee during an exchange. Although shaken, Bashi recovered quickly and shot for a takedown. Rodriguez rolled with the attempt and scrambled back to his feet, but Bashi remained relentless in his pursuit of takedowns. His aggression, however, left his neck exposed, giving Rodriguez an opportunity to threaten with a guillotine. He didn't have it. Back in open space, Rodriguez caught a kick from Bashi and dumped him to the mat, but Bashi was quick to return to his feet and initiate another takedown attempt. Rodriguez defended well but briefly turned away, allowing Bashi to leap onto his back. Despite the precarious position, Rodriguez stayed composed, maintaining excellent defense until Bashi abandoned the effort. Breaking free from the clinch, Rodriguez launched a flurry of strikes, showing his high output. However, his overzealous approach left him vulnerable, and Bashi capitalized with another takedown. Even then, Rodriguez quickly reversed the position, sweeping Bashi and regaining top control before returning to his feet as the round ended. To start round 2, Austin Bashi was advancing. He was missing on the punches but would throw into a single leg. He was never able to fully get Rodriguez down, but the initial shot saw him complete it. Rodriguez, never complacent, moved to his knees then to his feet but with Bashi backpacked. Once again, Bashi didn't have the best position and would give it soon enough. Right away Bashi went back to the takedown. As Rodriguez continued to stop the initial takedown, he was having trouble fending off Bashi's chain wrestling. Bashi attempted to take his back but Rodriguez slipped away and got back to his feet. Needing to get some momentum, Rodriguez was landing some good blows, but Bashi slowed the pace down until the bell. In the final round, Bashi landed a front kick that transitioned smoothly into a takedown attempt. Although it was a well-executed sequence, Rodriguez defended effectively. Despite Rodriguez's strong defense, Bashi maintained a relentless pace, constantly pressuring forward. However, at times, his aggression backfired, as Rodriguez proved to be the better scrambler. In one exchange, Bashi wound up on his back, attempting a kimura, but used the cage to work his way back up. On the feet, Rodriguez showcased his superior striking, landing crisp combinations and well-timed knees that connected cleanly. However, Bashi's grinding style kept Rodriguez from fully capitalizing on his striking advantage. As the fight wore on, Bashi's cardio began to fade, and his takedown attempts became more telegraphed. Rodriguez finished the fight strong, adding a touch of showmanship in the final moments, closing out an entertaining third round. Come the scorecard, it was no surprise to see Christian Rodriguez announce the winner. Bashi, served up the first loss of his pro MMA career, will learn plenty from the experience however. There was Spygate, with Christ Curtis falsely accusing Roman Kopylov of sending spies to his training camp for UFC Vegas 101. Then the Action Man revealing he'd once threatened to cripple teammate Sean Strickland. Yes, it was a typically wild build-up to a Chris Curtis fight once again ahead of UFC Vegas 101, but all that took a backseat once the cage door closed on Saturday. Kopylov opened the fight with a body kick, while Curtis fired a punch or two back. Kopylov then went low with a kick, while Curtis fired his jab. A Curtis kick to the body didn't have much behind it. Just over a minute in, Kopylov found the mark more than once with a crisp jab of his own. A roughly 4-punch combo came moments later for Roman Kopylov, and each and every one could be heard landing with an audible thud. Curtis was covering up as best he could, guard high, which opened up the body as a target, a fact Kopylov was happy to take advantage of. Chris Curtis, meanwhile, was looking to find an opening, firing a punch over the top, and a nasty left uppercut. That uppercut gave Kopylov pause, and suddenly he was fighting off the back foot, though not for long. Round 2 saw Curtis on the attack early, opening up a cut over the right eye of Roman Kopylov and damaging his nose. The Action Man was very much in the fight, landing with more accuracy. Just as things were really going well for Curtis, however, he was hit with a low blow, though one that glanced off his own forearm and was far from intentional. A brief pause in the action, and Curtis was good to go. He went back on the attack, snapping back the head of the bloodied Kopylov more than once. Whether Kopylov was compromised or not, the visual was not a good one. And moments later, the Russian was guilty of another foul, poking Curtis in the eye. That drew a warning from the ref, but luckily Curtis was again good to continue. And he continued to display smart defense, giving Kopylov a lot of different looks. Roman connected solidly at the end of the frame, but round 2 belonged to Curtis. Roman Kopylov answered the bell for round 3, coming out fired up and firing a few heavy uppercuts. Curtis was still game, but Kopylov had him rocked at one point and appeared to have found a second wind. It seemed as if neither man had even thought about a takedown through the better part of 3 rounds. That changed with just under 2 minutes to go. As Roman Kopylov put Curtis on his back, Curtis worked back to the fence, regaining his feet and giving him a final minute to finish the fight. Both men were swinging hard, but both men were exhausted. Then, with all of a second left on the clock, Kopylov launched a head kick just as Curtis leaned into it. Partially blocked at best, Curtis dropped to his knees, unsteady, as Kopylov walked off. The ref, meanwhile, waved off the fight, leaving Curtis furious about a stoppage being declared despite not being in any danger at that point. Curtis could barely contain himself as Kopylov went over to pay his respects, and coach Eric Nixick was far from pleased as well. Notably, Curtis refused to let the ref hold his hand while the result was being announced. Middleweight Cesar Almeida and Abdul Razak Alhassan threw down on the UFC Vegas 101 main card on Saturday, with former kickboxing champ Almeida looking to improve to 3-1 under the UFC banner. While Almeida's MMA experience was on the lighter side, adding in his kickboxing prowess, he was a slight favorite over Alhassan, who had over 8 years' experience in the UFC. Almeida circled early on the outside, landing a few solid leg kicks. Alhassan pressed forward throwing wild right hands, but Almeida protected himself well. Almeida started opening up with kicks to the body, before defending a takedown attempt from Alhassan. Almeida briefly stood in front of Alhassan and got clipped with a straight right hand, knocking him down. Almeida then scrambled to his feet and regained his composure. Alhassan pushed forward trying to finish the fight and ran into a viscous left hook that knocked him out cold. One of the most violent knockouts you'll ever see. Alhassan was out for a considerable amount of time. The former Glory kickboxer made a statement with this monster win over a true veteran of the sport. Regaining his composure and landing a lethal knockout shot shows just how patient and composed Almeida is on the feet. Almeida may have limited experience in MMA, but he is massively talented and has tremendous potential at 185 pounds. In his post-fight interview, Almeida was elated with his performance and expressed a desire to fight in Brazil. With other kickboxing stars like Alex Pereira crossing over to MMA with massive success, look out for Almeida to rise up the rankings in 2025. With Carlston Harris 2-2 across his last 4, and Argentina's Santiago Ponzinibbio 1-4 in his last 5 fights, Saturday's UFC Vegas 101 come-on event was a key fight for both men. Though clearly more critical for the Argentinian dagger, Guyana's Harris was looking to avoid a second straight high-profile setback under the UFC banner. Ponzinibbio started the fight by taking control of the center of the octagon. Pressure and piercing strikes were the name of the game for the Argentine. Ponzinibbio was landing strikes in combination, while Harris was landing one at a time. Towards the end of the first round, those one strikes at a time became rather effective. Harris briefly sat Ponzinibbio down, tracked him down like the Terminator, and then dropped him with a 1-2. Ponzinibbio survived. Ponzinibbio got right on the front foot again in round 2, pressuring Harris back. Harris was landing strikes right on the button that repeatedly caused Ponzinibbio to stumble. Harris' length was causing Ponzinibbio a lot of trouble. These two veterans were going at it. Ponzinibbio started the third round by putting Harris on his back with a takedown and landing leg kicks from a standing position, while Harris was on the ground. Ponzinibbio stumbled Harris with a big right hand and followed up very well. After multiple stumbling right hands, Harris crumbled to the ground after a heavy right hand. Ponzinibbio landed another left hook, briefly putting Harris down again, but when Harris slowly began to regain a bit of composure, he was immediately rocked again. and that was enough for Kareckaite to call an end to this welterweight contest. After the win, Ponzinibbio told Michael Bisping that he hopes to stay active in 2025, suggesting a spot on the rumored Miami card in April. Strawweights Mackenzie Dern and Amanda Ribas met for the second time in the main event of Saturday's UFC Vegas 101, kicking off 2025 for the promotion. While the night was peppered with newcomers and lesser-knowns, making the card more about the future, Dern vs. Ribas 2 was very much about the present, and about how far both athletes had come since their first meeting, which Ribas had claimed via decision. Early on, Dern was content to work on the feet, firing a 1-2 but finding herself clipped by a Ribas punch in response. Dern mixed in kicks to the legs, plus a teep to the midsection. Ribas, in turn, charged forward, firing a combination and landing at least once. Plenty of action, plenty of movement, but not a lot of damage through the opening 2 minutes. Come the midway point of round 1, Dern then dragged the fight into her wheelhouse, exploding into a takedown and landing it. Ribas, parallel to the fence but several feet from it, initially closed her guard, trying to tie Dern up. Dern was not about to be stymied, however, and found a bit of space to work, though there was no opening through which to advance. Ribas wasn't gambling at all off her back, focusing on defense rather than allowing Dern to set up a submission. It was Ribas getting on top off a takedown early in round 2, though that was still an opportunity for Dern, who worked to secure an arm. Ribas would free the limb, and spend the bulk of the round on top, avoiding submissions and finding enough space to do some damage. With about a minute on the clock, Dern threw up an omoplata and used it to escape the position. Showing off her sublime jiu-jitsu skills, Dern then loved up an inverse crucifix of sorts, briefly tying up both of Ribas's arms from behind her. Still, the round was a much better one for Ribas, who dominated about 4 minutes of it. Round 3 found Ribas getting on top again, while Dern worked to sweep off her back. Brazil's Ribas stayed tight to Dern, limiting the space she had to work with. Mackenzie finally completed the sweep, using the fence for an assist, with about a minute left in the frame, getting on top. From there, she was able to move to mount, then landed a few clubbing blows and latched onto an arm. Time was ticking away, but Ribas couldn't gut it out, tapping just before the clock was about to run out. The pair are now 1-1 under the UFC banner, leading to the possibility of a rubber match down the line. Be sure to keep you guys in the loop for all future fights and updates. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you guys enjoyed.